Hello everyone, thank you for coming or for coming back. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make macarons. These are a very tasty and somewhat trendy right now French cookie. They are a little bit difficult to make, but I am sure that you can do it. So all the ingredients and the measurements are listed down below and we can start baking. So we are going to start by sifting our dry ingredients into a large bowl, and that is our almond flour and our powdered sugar. Now you can sift these together or separately, it doesn't really matter. Just make sure that you sift them all the way through, because you do want to make sure that you don't have any clumps or lumps in your cookie batter, because that will end up with a sort of rough top on your cookie. And the nice smooth shell in your macaron is one of the most important parts of having a successful macaron. So make sure you sift them really nice and well, and if there's any little bits at the end that just won't go through the sieve, then don't force them to, just go ahead and take them out and don't use it in your batter at all. Next, you are going to add in your first quantity of egg whites. These are divided, and half of them is going into this dry mixture and the other half is going to be whipped up. And into the part that's going to be in our dry mixture, we are going to add our flavors and our colors if you want to use them. So I find that the easiest way to flavor macarons is with these candy oils. So if you have any sort of oil, any sort of flavoring that you want to add, then you go ahead and use that here to flavor your macarons. I'm using a bubblegum flavored oil because I wanted some bubblegum flavored macarons. So I'm going to add that to my egg white, as well as a little bit of red food coloring to get a nice pink macaron shell. Now I will note that if you are using a flavoring that is an extract and not an oil, then you do want to be careful, because something like a lemon extract that is very strong can sort of burn your egg whites. So I wouldn't add it directly to the egg white, I would add it a little bit later on when you have it mixed together. So go ahead and add your flavoring, and then you are going to take your egg white and you're going to add it into your dry mixture. Now we are going to mix this in, but not completely. There are some recipes that will tell you to form a paste with this, but I do not like to do that. You're just going to mix it in to distribute a little bit, and it will look just very messy, very clumpy, but that is what we want. And then you can set that aside, and we are going to move on to making the meringue for our macarons. So these macarons are made with an Italian meringue. So in a pot we are going to combine our sugar and our water, and we are going to put that on to bring it to a boil to become the syrup that we add to our egg whites. So our egg whites are going to go into a clean bowl, and what we are trying to do here is get our syrup to 118 degrees Celsius at the same time that our egg whites are at a sort of soft peak. The way we are going to do that is just by waiting until our sugar syrup is almost at the temperature we want before you start whipping your egg whites, and you can sort of go back and forth if you need to, turning up and down the heat and turning up and down your mixer. But once your sugar syrup is at 118 degrees Celsius, you're going to slowly pour it into your egg whites, trying not to hit the beaters as much as you can, because that will just throw your syrup across the room or across the bowl. And that is not what we want. We want it all in the egg white mixture. So once you have added all your syrup to your bowl, you're going to go ahead and keep beating until your bowl is cool to the touch and your egg whites have formed some nice stiff peaks. Now at this point we are going to add our meringue mixture to our almond flour and egg white mixture. So I like to add this 1/3 at a time, folding in each time until it is almost completely combined before adding my next third. So with the first third, then it was definitely going to be messy. You're not going to get it to a smooth mixture at all, and that is fine. Just add the next third and keep on folding it in, and then the last third. And at this point, we are going to keep mixing until we get the right consistency. Now, the consistency of your macaron batter is very important. If it is under mixed, then it will sort of be a little bit too stiff and it won't spread nicely and you'll end up with a bumpy shell. And if it is over mixed, then it'll be sort of too weak to hold a nice smooth shell and it'll crack. So the way that I like to figure out that my macaron batter is at the right consistency is that I will take my spatula and I will pull up some batter, and I want to see that I can make a figure 8 in my batter without the 8 breaking before I get to the end. So hopefully it's easier to see what I'm talking about than to say what I'm talking about. You just want to be able to make a nice clean figure 8 in your batter using your batter without it breaking or clumping up, because that's how we know that we need to keep mixing or stop mixing. I do find that it is a lot easier to undermix your batter than overmix, so keep that in mind. If you're worried that it's not quite mixed enough, then you're probably okay to do another 1 to 2 folds. So once your batter is all nicely mixed, we are ready to start piping our macarons. So I'm just going to go ahead and add my batter to a piping bag fitted with a round attachment, and then start piping them out onto my parchment paper lined baking tray. Now, if you are not confident in your piping skills, then you can go ahead and trace out a little guide for yourself using a round cutter and a pencil, and just mark out some nice circles and then flip it over and you'll have a nice guide to go on. I did not do that because I am somewhat confident in my skills and also somewhat lazy. So I was just going freehand, but go ahead and trace out the circles if you need. Do make sure to give these a little bit of space, because while they will not spread in the oven, they will spread a little bit just after piping and when we give them a little bit of a whack to get the bubbles out. So once your circles are all piped, we are, like I said, going to give these a bit of a whack on the table or the counter. This is just to make sure that you get any big air bubbles out of your macarons. When you do this, you should see a few spring to the top, and you're just going to go ahead and make sure those pop, or you can give them a little poke with a toothpick or your finger if you like, just to make sure that they pop so that we don't have any big bubbles in the top of our shells. Now once this is done, you can set these aside to rest. The one last thing I decided to do though was add some sprinkles to the top of my macarons, because these are bubblegum flavored macarons, so why not make them kind of cute and fun. And now we are just going to set them aside to form a skin before we bake them. Now this skin is quite important to the macaron. It helps make sure that we get the foot on our macaron, which is another very important part of a successful macaron. So what it does is just, it sort of forms a barrier so that when the macarons go into the oven and rise, they rise in one direction only, so that you don't get any cracks coming out in the top of your cookie that aren't as visually appealing. So we know that they are done when we can run our finger across the top of the macaron without anything sticking to our finger. Depending on the humidity and the temperature and all kinds of things, this may take a different amount of time, but I find around half an hour to an hour is generally a good guideline. So once your macaron has a skin formed, you can go ahead and put them into the oven set to 315 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're going to leave them for about 20 to 30 minutes. Now, the way to know that your macarons are ready to come out is that they have risen nicely, they have a nice little foot on them, and they should seem as if they are starting to become firm enough that they should come away from the parchment. I don't wait until they fully come away from the parchment, because at that point I figure that they're pretty much like slightly overcooked, so I will bring them out just before I think they're done, so that the carryover and the heat from the tray will continue cooking them after they come out. You don't want to leave them long enough that they start to brown on the top either, because then they will be just a little bit too dry. Now, while those cool down, I want to show you a few of the signs that there was some trouble in your macarons. The first two I'm going to show you are an undermixed and an overmixed macaron. So like I said, it is a lot easier to undermix your macaron batter, and this is what you will see if you do that. The top will be sort of lumpy, it'll have some bumps in it, and that's because it wasn't able to fully spread out to a nice smooth top, and so that is what you're going to see if you have an under-mixed macaron. The inside also might be a little bit uneven, you might have some hollow spots, and that's just because of the inconsistencies in the batter. Now with an overmixed macaron, you will see that it has a sort of funny top and maybe a few different cracks. This is because since it is overmixed, it wasn't able to form a nice stiff shell that would keep it from getting all bent out of proportion. Next, I'm going to show you a macaron that was cooked at a temperature that was too high and a temperature that was too low. Now I find that this is probably the hardest one to control. If you have an oven thermometer that is separate from your internal oven thermometer, then I find this really helpful because not all ovens are consistent or reliable. So this one is just really annoying to deal with. What you can do if you are worried about it is put just 1 or 2 in the oven at first to make sure that it's a good temperature before adding in your whole batch if you are worried about wrecking all your macarons. Now what you will see with a one that was cooked in too hot of an oven is that you'll have browning around the top, because by the time it stops sticking to the bottom, the top has already overcooked. And with an undercooked one, you will see that it wasn't able to form a nice shell on top, so it will have spread and cracked in all these funny different directions. One that was cooked in an oven too hot, you will also sometimes see that there is a hollow spot in the top just because the inside didn't come up to the right temperature by the time the outside was done baking. Lastly, I'm going to show you one that wasn't allowed to form a skin before it was baked in the oven. Now, if you're running out of time and you're thinking, oh man, I just want to put these in the oven right now, then don't do that, because the skin is very important. Again, it helps form a nice shell that makes sure that your macaron just rises straight up and it doesn't have any cracks or bumps in the top like you see in this one that wasn't allowed to form a skin before I baked it. So those are a few different issues that you might have with your macarons, so just keep that in mind if you are having trouble. Now, the last thing we are going to do is mix up some buttercream filling for our macarons. Now, normally I would make a Swiss or an Italian buttercream because I really like a not super sweet buttercream with most of the things I bake, but as these are bubblegum flavored macarons, I figured you might as well go ahead and go for a super sweet American buttercream. So this is super simple. All you're going to do is add your butter and sift in your powdered sugar to a bowl, and you're going to go ahead and mix that together until it sort of looks like really crumbly and really loose. And then we're going to go ahead and add a pinch of salt as well as a nice generous splash of vanilla, and we are going to mix it until it is combined. Now, depending on how soft your butter is here, you will end up with a different stiffness of buttercream. So optionally, you can add cream about a teaspoon at a time until you get the consistency that you would like for piping your buttercream into your macarons. Now you can of course add flavor or food coloring here. Traditionally, the shell of the macaron isn't even the thing that is flavored, it is just the buttercream, which then soaks into the shell a little bit, but I really like flavoring my shell and buttercream different flavors, so that's why I am not adding another flavor other than vanilla to my buttercream. Alright, now that my macarons are all cooled, I just went ahead and paired them up with a match that looked like it was about the same size, and we are going to pipe our buttercream into our macarons just by piping a nice little blobby of buttercream into one side of our macarons, and then we are going to add on our top and give it a bit of a squish down so that the buttercream goes all the way to the edge. Now, lots of people will say that your macarons should sit for 24 hours before you eat them because the buttercream just sort of soaks the flavor into the shell and it helps just rehydrate it a little bit so it is nice and soft. And I think that definitely benefits your macaron a little bit. So I would say that is the best way to eat them, but you can of course eat them right away and they are still going to taste amazing. These ones were so tasty. They were definitely on the sweeter side, but it is a bubblegum macaron, so I don't know what you want if you don't want something sweet. But either way, these were so tasty and they are so fun to make. I know it is a bit of a scary cookie, but I know that you can do it. So I hope you make these, I hope you enjoy, and I will see you next time.